Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. From Palestinian schools in Qatar, today I'll be discussing the grammar portion of unit number 11, Strange Events. Our grammar is based upon defining and non-defining relative clauses. This is me, Miss Fatima Muhammad Iqbal. So, I'll be doing period number 3 and period number 7. What is the difference between them? A very simple difference. One of them is one type of relative clause and the other one is the second type of relative clause. I said relative clause. So the question comes in our mind, what is a relative clause? What is it? It is something that is connected to the main clause of the sentence. It is connected to the main clause of the sentence by a word such as who, whom, which, that, or whose. For example, Hasna is a girl. Full stop. She lives in Doha. Now, use a relative clause to connect the second part of the sentence with the first part. Hasna is a girl who lives in Doha. Another sentence comes here. It reminded him of the house that he used to live in. Now see, this that he used to live in is a relative clause. Now, if you look at that, what does it refer to? Does it refer to it or the house that he used to live in? That refers to the house. So the relative clause is another sentence that is dependent upon the main one. It gives more information about this one. And we can join it with that, who, whom, which, or whose. Now, how many types of relative clause do we have? We have only two types of relative clause: defining and non-defining. Defining. This is also called essential relative clause, and this is called non-essential relative clause. See, defining, non-defining. Yes, defining relative clauses give essential information. Essential, important, basic, very, very important. The man lives next door. He is very friendly. The man who lives next door is very friendly. We know a lot of people. They live in London. Now, here if you said we know a lot of people, the question arises, which people are you talking about? So we know those people who live in London. So this relative clause gives information which is very important. We use who or that when we talk about people. There are some more examples, you can read them. The most important point which I gathered for my student is that the defining relative clause give you necessary information, and there is no comma after the main clause. We can use who or that for a person and which or that for things. Hopefully you understood this point. Now, let's go to page number 63 and read these exercises and just highlight for me the relative pronoun and tell me, are they defining or non-defining relative clause? You can easily see the difference. Pause the video and then continue. Yes. Tim Dinsdale was an engineer who or that gave up his career to find Nessie. Now, who and that refers to Tim Dinsdale. He filmed an object. It appeared to be the real thing. It. We are not talking about he, we are talking about the object. So this is relative pronouns and which is about the thing, which or that. There was a local fisherman. The monster suddenly approached him. Now see, this is the end of the relative clause. Now we brought it here. There was a local fisherman who or that the monster suddenly approached. Number 4. People continued seeing things. No one could explain them. People continued seeing things. We have to change them. Which or that no one could explain because it is about things, not about people. Next one, most people reported a small head. They. Now this they refers to most people. Number 6, the oldest report goes back 1500 years. We have it. It. Which or that. So these are our relative pronouns which are giving us useful information. So these are defining relative clauses. And there is no comma. Can you see any comma here? There is no comma. So this is defining or essential relative clause. One point more I want to discuss that sometimes the relative clause comes in the end of the main clause. See, Tim Dinsdale was an engineer who or that gave up his career to find Nessie. We finished the main clause, then we added the relative clause. Number 2, again we finished it. So it comes in the end. End. We finished it and then we added the relative clause. But there is another situation when it comes in the middle of the relative clause. See here. Number 5. Most people reported a small head. Most people who or that saw it reported a small head. See, it broke the main clause and it inserted itself in between. So in number 5 and in number 6 you can see that it is coming in the middle. But 1 to 4 it is coming in the end of the main clause. Why am I explaining it to it? Because the coming exercises you have to answer that from 1 to 4. Where is the relative clause and that? Why am I explaining this thing? Because in the coming activity we are supposed to answer in which sentences the relative clause comes in the end and in which sentences it comes in the middle of the main clause. Now pause the video here and note down your information which I have already explained in detail. I'll continue. The relative clauses in all examples add. Relative clauses in all the examples add. These examples that we took on page number 63, activity number 1. Add necessary or unnecessary information to the first part of their sentences. This is called the main sentence. They are defining relative clauses. Defining. Of course, necessary. Examples 1 and 3 show that we can use who or that or which or that in relative clauses about people. People. Who or that. 2 and 4 show that we can use which or that about things. In examples 1 and 2, who and which are the subject or the object of their relative clause. Go back to 1 and 2 and confirm they are the subject. But 3 and 4, who and which are the object of their relative clause. Now here, this is the most important part. In examples 1 to 4, the relative clause adds information about the last part of the main clause. It is correct. And it comes in the middle or at the end of the sentence. I read them for you. 1, 2, 4 at the end. And example 5 to 6, the relative clause adds information about the first part of the main clause and it comes in the middle or at the end. I explained it to you in the middle. Time to do our homework. This is the first homework on page number 63. Form sentences with relative clauses about the last part of the main clause. Match the sentence halves and add who or which. Here we have to add who and which. For your convenience, I did number 4. From 1933, there were new roads which people used to get to the lake. See, here the relative clause, if you focus here, where's my mouse? Yes. Here, the relative clause did not come in the middle. It came in the end of the main clause. So you have to match them and write the sentences 1, 2, 3 only, because number 4 is done by me. Send me your written work. Come to activity number 3. Form sentences with relative clauses about the first part of the main clause. Match the sentence halves and add who or which. Now we have to add the relative clause here. I did for you number 4. But thousands of visitors who you can often see around the loch, this is called loch and it is for lake, still hope to see the real thing. So here you have to bring the relative clause in the middle of the sentence. 1, 2, 3. Match it and send me the written work. Students, after taking a little break, which I gave you for the homework, we are starting our period number 7, page number 68. It is the other relative clause, which is called non-defining relative clause. It gives additional information. To be precise, it gives unnecessary information. The information which is not very, very important, and the main clause is complete without it. Here we must use comma. We use only who, whom, which and whose. We do not use that here. So for that clause we use who, whom, which, whose. My Uncle John, comma, who owns a department store, is very rich. Now read the sentence without the red relative clause. My Uncle John is very rich. Complete. Now this is additional information. That's why we used comma before and after the relative clause. Let's take some more examples. My ESL teacher, who came to Germany in 1986, likes to ride his mountain bike. Again, unnecessary. The heavy rain, which was unusual for the time of the year, destroyed most of the plants in my garden. The sentence is complete without which part. The boy started a fire in the classroom. Now here, look at the non-defining relative clause. Whose parents both work as teachers at the school. It doesn't matter because the sentence is complete. In the summer, I'm going to visit Italy, where my brother lives. Again, it is non-defining. Why? Because it doesn't give useful information. So, non-defining relative clause, if you want to note down, it gives unnecessary information and the main clause is complete without it, and there is a comma before and after the main clause. There is a comma after the main clause, not before. Now, come to page number 68. Read the examples and mention the non-defining relative clauses and the relative pronouns. Pause the video here. Number 1. Some research was done by students from Oxford. They recorded some echoes. Some research was done by students from Oxford, comma, who recorded some echoes. So they is replaced by who. And we used comma here after the main clause. This required a line of 19 words. Full stop. They each carried powerful equipment, comma, which each carried powerful equipment. Dr. Robert Rines led the next team. He brought them. Dr. Robert Rines led the next team who he brought from Chicago. Who he brought. Next was Project Urquhart. This team designed it. Next was Project Urquhart, which the team designed to study the whole lake. So here, another difference, in addition to comma, you can see that we did not use that. That is not used in non-defining relative clauses. These are the non-defining relative clause. They are coming with a comma and you won't find any that here. Neither for people nor for things. Now pause the video here in order to solve your exercises, which is very, very easy as compared to period number 3. Your answers with me. The first clauses in examples 1 to 4 are complete statements in themselves. Complete statements in themselves. Do they require or do not require relative clauses to complete their meaning? See, if they are already complete, so do they need or do not need? Of course, they do not need. So the second clause is in example 1 to 4. Add necessary or unnecessary. Very, very easy. If we do not require them, it means they are unnecessary. Number 3. Like defining relative clause or unlike defining relative clause. Non-defining relative clauses have commas to keep them outside the main part of their sentence. Is it like or unlike? Of course, unlike. We use who, mouse, we use who or which for clauses about people. We never use that, we never. Is it who or which for people? Correct. We use who or which about things. We never use that. Things. Which. In examples 1 and 2, who and which are the subject or the object. Check it with me and then write the answer, which is the subject. But in 3 and 4, who and which are the object of the relative clause. See the difference between, again, I'm revising it for my students. The relative clause has 2 types. Defining relative clause, non-defining relative clause. Defining relative clause is also called essential relative clause. Non-defining relative clause is called non-essential relative clause. I'll give you a summary in the end. Again, activity number 2, match 1 to 5 to A to E and turn A to E into non-defining relative clause. Add commas, very, very important. And who or which, not that. I did for you number 5. You're supposed to do the rest 4. Each had some powerful equipment which, comma, which was used to record echoes. Echoes. Activity number 3, match 1 to 5 to A to E and turn A to E into non-defining relative clause. Again add commas. You will use only who or which, not that. I did one for you. But first they sent the film to various experts who they asked to examine it thoroughly. Who they asked me. Who refers to the object. Yes. That was 2 activities, activities 2 and activity 3. You have the homework for 1 to 4, and in activity 2 you have the homework from 1 to 4 as well. This was the end. Here I would like to give you the summary. We have 2 types of relative clauses, defining and non-defining. Defining gives us useful information, non-defining unnecessary information. Defining doesn't need any comma, non-defining needs comma. You can use that in defining, you cannot use that in non-defining. Plus, defining relative clause can come in the middle of the main clause, whereas non-defining comes in the end of the main clause. This was the end from my side. Hopefully you understood this lesson. Ms. Fatima Muhammad Iqbal saying you goodbye.